in a bit of a dilemma today. So I'm going to lay some track, and we'll go through some of that in a little while. But as part of this laying of the track, I have a Peco SL E-97 Electroflog Point, and the instructions that come with the Peco Electroflog Point are wrong. Here's a standard SL E-92 Electroflog small radius left-hand point, and we'll look in a minute and see how this is sort of standard and how this works, and then we'll look at the other one. Now, I did a little bit of research online this morning and saw some different stuff, but I didn't really see the answer. But I think I've worked out how to wire this point up. And a lot of the answers I saw were just don't touch it, leave it as it is. But I want to put a tortoise point motor onto it, and so as part of that whole process, I want to wire the frog for polarity. So I'm going to show you some close-ups of what's going on here, and then we'll try to describe the issues. So I will be right back. So here's the instructions on the SL E-97, and you'll see it says to cut these two wires. Well, you know, that's what we do on a standard turnout, and that isolates the frog. But those wires don't exist on the SL E-97. So let's look at both of the points together. So here we have both the points, and you see they look sort of fairly standard from up top. However, you will notice that if we actually go down into the frog, on the standard point there's no break. On this one there is a small break there, which obviously can be used to isolate the frog. Alright, let's turn these over. So typically what we do is on the standard we cut through those two wires right there, and that will isolate the frog. There aren't any wires. However, if I really look closely, and as we can see, there are no wires like that to cut on this one. I'll come back over here, and as I say, there's two wires. So there are, however, there's wires right here. So my determination is if I cut those wires, then this little tiny piece of plastic right in here will isolate. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip through these two wires here, and then now the other thing normally is that somewhere on the point I will put droppers. There really doesn't seem to be a place to put droppers unless I put them right here. So I think maybe that's what I'll do. I'll add droppers right there. So we'll come back in a minute and see what we're doing with this wiring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to cut through these wires right here, and then we will solder the droppers on in a minute. So I cut through those wires, and now we'll see that that is going to isolate the frog. Not going to get into a long discussion about what sort of wires to use. This happens to be what I use. I like to use this flexible silicon covered wire for droppers because it easily moves around underneath the layout, and it's easy to use. This is 20 AWG, which is what I standardly use for droppers. So you know, lots of people will tell you lots of different things about different wire to use. This is what I use. I seem to use it pretty successfully. First thing I'm going to do is tin the ends of the wires, and before I do this I just dip them into some flux. I just find it easier to have a little bit of flux on the wires. I use this sort of paste, used it for years. and just roll a little bit onto the ends of the wires like that, and hopefully that makes the solder run better. So we'll solder these up. I like to use one of these helping hands, third hands, whatever you call it. It's just a crocodile clip on a stand. This one also has a light on it, which I can use sometimes. That just holds the wire for me, so I get two hands free to solder. So take some of my cord solder. This is I don't even know what this is, but it's a lead cord solder, so it is nasty. It does have lead in it, but it seems to work better. And take my soldering iron. Alright, my soldering iron's dirty. I gotta clean it. Okay, I'm gonna try again. I cleaned off the end of my soldering iron. It's now melting the solder. So I grabbed a different soldering iron. That one needs a new tip on it. I don't have any tips to hand, so a different soldering iron, and just this one's getting things hot enough to, when the tips get dirty like that, the iron just doesn't get hot enough to run the solder. So basically you get the wire hot, just let the solder roll onto the wire. Just enough to cover it. That one looks good. This one still looks a bit iffy. I think that's good now. Okay. So, next thing I got to do is scuff up the rail where I'm going to solder onto it. So let's do that in a second. I have one of these scratch brush sets, and you get steel wire, brass wire, fiber bristle, nylon bristle. Really doesn't matter which. I'm probably going to try use the steel wire. The thing's just like that, and you get the wire on the end, and then we'll take the piece of track. We'll get in here and just scuff this up so we take the surface off of it. Now I put a couple of little blobs of solder in there. It's really tough to not melt the plastic a little bit, particularly with these where they're deep. I prefer the ones where you cut the webbing away. I just didn't want to cut the webbing away on this particular point. Next thing to do before we actually solder the wires on is to make sure we have them on the right side. I always do a black to back, the BB wiring, which I think a lot of people do. I use black and red, and so that means that the black is actually going to go on the front when I turn it over. So then I'm going to do that. I can't really hold the camera and solder at the same time on this, so I'm just going to solder it and show you the finished job. There's the point all soldered up. Now, I always like to check continuity, make sure my solder joints are good, because I don't want to have to rip this up later. So I'm going to go grab a test meter and a battery. Use a standard 9-volt battery, and I'll put a couple of crocodile clips on the battery. Then we'll connect the other end of the crocodile clips onto my wires here, and then we'll put the meter over the tracks. So if we look at my meter, I can go put these across the track, and we will see the meter hopefully will show us a good reading. Yep. Whoa. Yep, there we go. 8.9 volts. I mean, it's a 9-volt battery, so that's good. The other thing I can check as well is to see that my frog is isolated. So let's make sure that there's, yep, my frog is isolated. See, it's isolated from both tracks. I have nothing there. So I've determined this is where I want this point to go. Basically, this is the branch line that goes up to the station. And right now it joins the main line down here, but I want to take the branch line and have the branch line run up over there, and eventually it will disappear into a tunnel somewhere down there. So I want to get this piece of track laid all along here. So first thing I'm going to do is put down the cork road bed and then temporarily lay the track and see how things are going to fit, and then we will cut in and put this point in place. First Next thing I'm going to do is just take a couple of small pieces of cork road bed, line up the point, and then we'll take a marker and mark the bed and the point, and then we can see how and where we need to cut the cork road bed so the point goes through, and then we'll trim it up later. So I'm just going to roughly mark this cork. Having done that, I can see what I need to trim. So we'll take it off and we'll get a sharp knife and we'll trim it. It's cork road bed, so I'm going to trim that down. Having get that cut, you can see it's going to need to be sort of angled a bit. As we stick it, it'll stick down, and put a couple of tacks in there just to hold it while I'm gluing it. So I glue this down with PVA. So I'm going to glue down some road bed, and we'll once we get the PVA and we get it glued down, we'll come back and look at it. Now, I just discovered I don't have enough road bed to get all the way down to the end where I wanted to go. I'm going to need to get some more. I'm going to get about halfway down. So we'll see what we do with that. So I'll come back in a minute and show you how I glue the road bed down. When it comes to PVA, I like to buy it in gallons. If you go to a local hardware store, you'll often find this will not be with the glue. It's with the paint, and I don't quite get why, but it's in the paint aisle, and you can buy it by the gallon, and it's about 15 bucks for a gallon as opposed to $5 for a little tiny thing of it. So you know, this is what I use. What I do is I put some of my PVA into a little tray. This is just a tray that had, I don't know, something in it. I keep these trays when I get stuff, and then they're useful because I can throw them out afterwards and not worry about it. And then I use just use a spreader, just to spread the PVA on the back, and then stick it. And then if I need to keep it in place, I'll just use a couple of track pins, but I'll make sure the track pins are not all the way in, so I can come along with a pair of pliers and pull them out afterwards, because I don't really want track pins in the cork bed holding that down. So I'm just going to get on and stick this stuff down, and then we'll come back when I'm done. So I have the bed laid and just put a few weights on there just to hold it down while it sticks. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the track and cut into the track where I'm going to put the points, and also drill some holes for the wires. So we'll do that in just 1 second. So I have a Sharpie here. I'll work out exactly where I want this point to go. I think that's the point, that's the place I want it. So I'm going to mark the tracks. Take that fish blade off. Mark the tracks with a Sharpie so I can see exactly what I need to cut out. The other thing I need to do as well is I need to drill some holes for wires. So based upon that, there's a wire from the frog, needs to be right about there. And then these two wires, I need one here, and I need one there. So as well. And then the last thing I need to do is I'm going to put a tortoise point motor underneath here, so I need to know where that's going to go, and do that by marking the two sides, and then we know it's going to need to be in the middle right there. So now I'm going to get my Dremel tool. I'm just going to take my Dremel tool and cut through the rails right where I mark. So the old adage of measure twice, cut once comes in, and I cut this too short, but it's easy. All I'm going to do is take out that little piece of track there and recut a piece of track to go in there that's the right length, and then I should be good. One important thing to remember is that that frog needs to be isolated. So we need to put isolation fish plates or rail joiners. These are just little, I I don't know, plastic rubber ones that you get from the rail store, and that will isolate that frog. So just want to make sure I remember to tell you that. So I'm now just going to so the next thing I need to do is to drill my holes where I marked for my wires. So I'm going to do that right now. The hole for the tortoise point motor has to be bigger, so I had to get the trusty old drill out to drill that one. But I had a minor problem here, and this is something you need to look out for. Underneath my baseboard I'd get 2x4s, and unfortunately right where I needed to get the wires to go down was hitting the 2x4, so I had to run the wires along. It'll be okay, I'll cover them up when I ballast the track, but it's a little bit, luckily, you know, here where the throw is beyond the 2x4, and I think I got enough room to get a tortoise point motor in there, so I should be good. Okay, so I get track temporarily laid. I can't go any further because I don't have any more cork base. I need to go buy some. So some considerable time later, a lot of adjustments to this point. I can get a coach to run through here without derailing. I was having all sorts of problems with it. It really was not well laid. So we're going pretty well. After a significant amount of frustration, I'm pulling it out. Put a different point in here. I'm going to have to move some of this track, do all sorts of other stuff, but it's enough for today. So after a considerable amount of rework, rethinking, trying to understand what it is I was doing here, I got this point relayed. I had to take the angle of the track out a little further so the point works. So now I can run a train back and forth over the point without a problem. Thanks for watching. As you can see, sometimes things don't always go as planned. I did and ah as to whether to post this video, but I think it's good to show that occasionally it doesn't happen as you want it to happen, and things go wrong. The result in the end was good, but took a little bit of, I think MacGyvering is a good word. We got there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.